Hey, I want to tell you a little story here. Maybe we'll turn it into a little message. It had to have been '04 or '05, so it's a long time ago. And I was going to a physical therapy seminar. And it was like a seminar. It's one of these ones that I don't really like going to anymore. Remember, back then, I've only been a therapist for a couple years. And it was one of those like mishmashes, like every speaker gets like an hour or less or something like that. And the seminar was in Columbus, Ohio. And before going, now mind you, I'm still in Philly, so it had to have been in the off season. And I guess it was a website at the time, and I messaged the website at Westside Barbell. And I said, my name's Charlie Weingroff, blah, blah, blah. I'm trained by Bill Crawford. I didn't like say much more than that. And I was hoping if I would be able to come by the gym, not really knowing that that's not something that's, really as open as maybe other things or what we expect in certain places. So I pretty much, a very short period of time goes by. I'm saying like a day, maybe nobody responds, or who knows what it is. And Doris Simmons responds and says, yeah, we'd love to have you. You're welcome. And blah, blah, blah. Here's the instructions on how to get here. And, just say, this email when you get there. Well, a few days later, remember, I had done like an info email. And a few days later, I get a phone call. And it's a very, very distinguishable voice, and it's Louie Simmons, and I'm not gonna do his voice. I think people have heard me do it enough, and basically say, hey, I saw that you messaged, and when are you gonna be in town? And as that conversation went, it was very benign because I'm like, oh my God, I'm talking to Louie Simmons, and felt very similar to the first time. I've met other people in the profession that I really looked up to. And he had not known that Doris had already extended the invite. And Louis said, yeah, we checked you out. Like, we'd like to see what you can do. I'm like, holy mother of God. Like, wow. Like, and I hadn't gone for elite yet or anything like that, but, I'd done some things. I didn't go. It just seemed like, I think it was probably a different area. It just seemed like it was beyond the level of convenience that I wanted to make at that time. And basically what could have been an opportunity for me to train there, I am very, very comfortable saying years later that I was a bitch. I was a punk. I didn't make the commitment that other powerlifters. Now, I might have had reasons. Maybe my life at that time was very different. Remember, I'm a strength and conditioning coach in the NBA. I'm not really, from Columbus, Ohio, meaning to set up a life, et cetera, et cetera. Whatever my reasons were, I was a bitch, and I did not make the commitment. And I didn't really think of that at the time, but and I don't know that I would ever make a different decision. But I'm okay saying that because some of the things, when I reached a level, I didn't make the same commitments as some of the other individuals that were in my weight class or at that level they made. And there's nothing that stopped me from doing that. And if people look down on me, I deserve it. I deserve it because that's what powerlifting is, and that's what it takes to win. And I didn't do what it took. Things are okay, but when it comes to simply that aspect, I didn't do it. So anyway, a couple years go by, and it's the greatest powerlifting meet of all time. 2006, the WPO semifinals at Fort William Henry, in Lake George, New York. The greatest powerlifting meet of all time. That's where Andy Bolton went for 1,000. I remember because he obviously to get to the deadlift, he had to stay in the meet. So I think he went for a pretty big squat. But it wasn't anything. It was way under what he could do. And I remember I gave him a shoulder walking by, and I'm like, yo, I could do that. And I think he had benched like 550. I'm like, yo, I could do that, and I'm sure he could bench a lot more. But he was just saving it. And I was a spotter and loader for that event, WPO semifinals. So anyway, met Louie Simmons for the first time at that meet. Introduced myself. He goes, "Yeah, I didn't think you were going to show up." And I said, "Yeah, you're right. You're right. Like, I knew you weren't going to have it." And he was right. He was right. We started talking about, the story shifts a little bit, and we were talking training. And at that time, I was at Iron Sport Gym in suburban Philadelphia, Steve Pulcinello's gym. Amazing place, amazing positive place in my life. I met some great people. I mean, I went back once after leaving, and Steve wasn't around, but Sean Boylan was around. But if I were to go back tomorrow, it'd be like amazing. And I've just been so lucky to have gyms where you can train in a particular way, whatever that way might be. So at the gym, you had a reverse hyper, and I remember other power lifter, big dude. I don't remember his name because everybody called him Sniffy. He might be watching this, and Sniffy was insistent on doing the reverse hyper in some crazy way where you tuck your legs way under and round your back, and basically blow out your back. And I remember asking Louie, about the reverse hyper, and I, what do you think of when, because I actually said at the gym here in Bill Crawford's gym in Lake George. He had his reverse hyper that, because Bill is also an expert welder and makes gym equipment. The fulcrum was so far underneath that you couldn't let your legs go all the way through. And he goes, "Yeah, if anybody's rounding their back too much on the reverse hyper, they're doing it wrong." Okay, and I remember coming back to way after the rest of the story. I'm like, well, this is what Louie Simmons said, and blah blah blah. So. But going back to at the meet, it was during one of the breaks, and they kept calling him the Kid. His name, I know his last name was Kutcher. He's one of the Russians, and he probably weighed like 148 or 165. I think he pulled like 865. And Louie said, we talk about this reverse hyper. Why don't we just go to the gym right now, and I'll show you what we're talking about. And I'm like, oh, what? He's like, well, I just want to get back to see the Kid lift. So a few minutes later, Louie Simmons is sitting in the front seat of my Chevy Avalanche, and we're driving around the hotel in Lake George, because Bill's gym in that hotel, it was all the way in the total other side of the meeting rooms where the powerlifting meets typically were. His gym was in the old church, because this is a real fort, back in the day, and it had a church, and Bill had his gym in this old church. So he had to drive, a little bit, and, we're just chatting, and we walk into the gym. And remember, I'm not, however old I was at the time, in my 20s, and you walk in, and it's like every West Side guy is there warming up, because all the big guys hadn't lifted yet, and it's like, oh my God, that's so and so, and that's so and so, and oh wow. And I walk in with Louie Simmons, and we just, elbow up to the reverse hyper, and he just starts talking, and he just starts talking, and you know what happened next. Every single individual in the gym was surrounding the reverse hyper and listening to Louie Simmons speak. I don't have a ton of other stories or connections to Louie Simmons, but how I felt when this relative stranger, who I did not make a commitment to, I was a punk, was so accommodating. And I can only wish that somebody tells a story like this about me one day. So it's I think a lot of people would say, I didn't suck in powerlifting, but I didn't take steroids at that time, and I didn't even have the gear that everybody else had. And people would say like, like, man, like you should do this, you should do this. I just never did it. And but a lot of the things that I learned that made me not suck, I learned. Never did Westside, because you can't do Westside unless you're at Westside. But the things that I learned, I like to think that there's not a lot of messages that I have ever heard Louie talk about that I had never heard of or wasn't able to regurgitate and translate in a different way. So maybe the message is, I think there's probably people that didn't know, or I get a kick out of it. There's some people that don't know that I've been a physical therapist for well over 20 years. There's some people that don't know that for a good part of my career, I haven't been a physical therapist. I've been more of a strength and conditioning coach, or a performance coach, whatever you want to call it. Maybe some people know me for championing things like the active straight leg raise, Omega Wave, the things we've done in terms of building a group of individuals in Canada basketball. But read what Louie Simmons has written and listen to what he said, because at the end of the day, it's not that different. Maybe you think that it's a good idea, you want to do everything in one day. Well, he just wants to do it in a week. And you pick your exercises in a certain way, and he picks his exercise a certain way. But at the end of the day, the physiology and neurology, the rules across all different training models are really all the same. And I wish that more people would see what I saw in this relative stranger who's willing to get in the stranger's truck and go over to the gym and just talk training, as long as we got back in time to see Kutcher deadlift. So, I'm not going to put up a picture because I never met I never spent any more time with him than that phone call and that day and in Lake George. So I don't. It's interesting because I don't have this incredible volume of connection, but I know a lot of the way that I think and the way that I try to help other people is from a lot of the things that I learned from Louie Simmons, and I just thought this was a good time to tell that story. So hope that makes sense. And that dog on your shirt, dog's name is Nitro.